Coming up, Debbie and I are here for our Friday roundup, and our broad topic is Sharia land, Sharia coming to America. But we're going to cover a bunch of stuff from Trump's economic policies, runaway judges, a couple of grisly murders, Megyn Kelly's soft feminism, and the strange arrival of Mecca in a Texas city called Sugarland. If you're watching on X, Rumble, or YouTube, listening on Apple or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the subscribe or follow or notifications button. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
Debbie and I are here for our Friday roundup, and this wasn't exactly planned, but I noticed we have matching outfits. I noticed you were chuckling when you noticed that as we got to the car.
Yes, and then I noticed that yours says Trump on it.
Yeah, I don't normally wear Trump paraphernalia. That's very unusual for me. But you probably remember, I got this shirt when we were at Bedminster at the golf course.
Yeah.
And they had some cool merchandise.
Yeah, they did.
And it was kind of subtle. It has Trump on here, but it's a little bit on the muted. Oh, it's a big, beautiful
shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our theme for today is kind of, I think it's right up your alley, in fact.
Oh, yeah.
And it alludes to a place that you used to live in called Sugarland, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
But you nickname it Sharia land. But let's start off by talking about where the name Sugarland comes from.
Well, I believe Sugarland came because of sugar imperial sugar.
So the sugar factory
is there. They
Right.
did close it down subsequently, but I think that's where the name came from. It's a suburb from Houston suburb, and I lived there from 1994 until about 2014.
Yep.
And so 20 years in Sugarland. But I did begin to notice that there was a shift in the demographics when I was there, mainly right after, actually during 9/11. When 9/11 happened, it kind of just, was like, wow, we have a lot of Muslims that live in our community. And, there's a sect, remember we talked about this, there's a Muslim sect called Ismailis, right? And they are, for the most part, very Western. The women do not wear hijabs. And they're very, very nice people. In fact,
I encountered some of those Ismaili Muslims in India.
uh-huh.
They follow the Aga Khan,
Yeah.
who was kind of their leader.
Yeah, he passed away in February, I believe, at the age of 88.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he was like their pope, I guess, if you want to call it spiritual
right.
leader. Yeah, but some of and I had a lot of neighbors that were Ismaili Muslims that were just really, really nice people, very peaceful people. But there was also a mosque that was built in my community, and it was a Sunni mosque. And I did discover some not so nice, I guess you could call it literature in their
You're
website.
saying the seeping of radical Islam
Yes.
via the Muslim Brotherhood.
That's right.
Those themes.
That's right.
And I think all of us became much more alerted to all that
Yes.
after 9/11,
That's right.
right?
That's
but
right.
very recently, there was
Yeah.
in this very town, Sugarland, Texas. By the way, Sugarland used to be a red-leaning conservative part of Texas and is now gone blue. And that's not irrelevant to what we've been talking about, because it's partly the infusion of a Muslim population that has been voting Democratic and has pushed this part of Texas into blue territory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, recently they had this event at the Sugarland, was it at the convention
Town Square.
center? The
No,
town square?
Sugarland, in front of Sugarland Town Square. So it is in front of the city hall.
Okay.
And they call it Mecca. Well, the Rare Foundation, RAIR Foundation, had this, and a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, sent this to me. Like, can you believe this? That was his.
Right.
Of course I believe it, because 15 years ago, I nicknamed Sugarland Sharia Land.
Right.
So, of course I believe it. It's not a shock to me at all.
Let's take a moment and we talk about what the it is. We pulled a clip of this gathering.
Oh, yes.
And it has a very interesting name, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we're showing it to you as a kind of representation of what happens as Islam kind of roots itself in kind of all American communities and creates a whole different mood, a whole different vibe. And the question we want to discuss is it a prelude to something bigger, a kind of Islamic takeover, if you will, of communities and of society in general? So let's take a moment and watch this clip.
At the Mecca, this is the first time in history of Sugarland that we have live azan and live transmission directly from Mecca and Medina. Ashhadu an la.
Now you have to admit,
Wow.
when you see this, this was a familiar sight for me growing up in India.
Mhm.
But I have to say, India is a Hindu and Muslim country. Hindus are the majority,
Mhm.
but Muslims are a significant minority, which is not the case, by the way, here in America. So it's remarkable that Islam is going after so much like public display.
Mhm.
Islam in America is no bigger than, let's say, Christians are in India. And yet Christians in India are very low key. They don't tend to take over stadiums and they don't proclaim like Christian supremacy, none of that, because they're in a Hindu country.
That's right.
But here something else is going on. And one of the phrases that you introduced me to, which frankly I hadn't heard before, even though I've studied some of this and written about radical Islam, the phrase is what, Adnan? Is that what it's called?
Adhan.
Adhan. What is an Adhan?
Yeah, Adhan is basically a declaration of supremacy over all other religions from Islam. But I want to read something really, really fast here. So this rare article says, Sugarland, Texas, a once sleepy American suburb steeped in family values and traditional civic life, is being rapidly transformed. I'd like to make the correction that no, this has been the case for decades.
It's been going on.
It's been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's
only being rapidly maybe noticed.
This is the first ever open air iftar in the region. Obviously, an iftar is a gathering of Muslims where they also pipe in Mecca and Medina.
Oh, right.
So basically, it's like their dream come true, right? And according to this article, it's marked territorial ideological milestone for Texas. So it's basically an Islamic call to prayer, or adhan. Okay, adhan meaning, so in some Muslim countries, you hear the call to prayer in speakers all over the place, right? Loudspeakers. With like chanting and like a song and all of that. And that's called Adhan because they are declaring that they are the supreme religion. Their Allah is the supreme Allah over all other religions. In other words, their God is the only true God, is what they're saying.
Yeah. But I mean, is that, how unusual is that, right? Isn't that what, I wouldn't say every religion, because Hinduism would be a notable exception, but wouldn't Christians say our God is the only God?
Well, there's a difference between saying it, believing it, and trying to change everything else around it. So according to this, the Adhan is a proclamation of Islamic supremacy over all other belief systems, right? Basically, their proclamation is, I'm going to put the Muslim of Muslim control, right? So it's rooted in the belief that there is Dar al-Islam and dal al harb, meaning there's either Islam or there's war, right?
House of Islam and House of War.
Yeah. So Christians obviously do not believe that. We obviously believe in peace. We obviously believe in if you're going to get saved by the blood of Jesus, it's a peaceful thing that you do with a personal relationship between you and Jesus. Nobody is going to get on an airplane and say, "In the name of Jesus, I'm going to blow this plane up." Have you ever heard such a thing? No. It only happens in this religion. So people that are afraid that this is going to, like, somehow they're going to seep into our government, system, and they're going to try to change our laws into Sharia law and all of those things, that's actually legitimate. I mean, look what they're doing in the Middle East. Look what they're doing to Israel in the Middle East. What if they did that here?
So part of what you're saying, I think, is that you can't look at this type of Islamic activism in the same way as, let's say, the Irish mobilizing in New York. And because the Irish went into government, they became cops. And so ethnic groups have banded together through American history. But you're saying this is different because it has a totalitarian ambition.
It does. And it also, it's like they claim to want to have unity, but they really don't want unity. They really want dominance. And that's where the problem lies, is in their wanting domination over your religion and even over people that are secular,
Yeah, I think we're identifying, we're not saying there are ordinary Muslims who are living their lives in America. They work in tech companies. We know a couple of guys who work with us and do things with us. So one of them drives us to the airport and other places. But what you're talking about is a political aspect of Islamic radicalism that has this agenda. And while there might be some fanatics in other religions who have similar agendas, in other religions, they're extremely marginalized, whereas in Islam, they're not so marginalized. I mean, first of all, they have control of a major state, Iran, one of the biggest Muslim countries in the world. They're very powerful in other powerful Islamic states like Turkey, Pakistan. So they are the...
And you notice that, obviously, in Iran, it's Shia, right?
Right.
Versus
Sunni.
But yet, their domination of the world, in other words, the caliphate, it transcends that. In other words, it doesn't matter if you're Sunni or Shia or maybe even Ismaili. I'm not sure. The caliphate is they unite against the West and against Christians and against Jews. So
I mean, this goes back ultimately, I think, to Mecca and Medina, right? So the Prophet Muhammad is pushed out of Mecca. He goes to Medina. He is able to establish a beachhead there and conquer Medina. Well, he could have said, well, listen, the Meccans don't want me, so I'll make my base in Medina. But of course, his first objective was, let me conquer Mecca. And so he was able to conquer Mecca, and then uniting Mecca and Medina to begin a regime of conquest that, quite frankly, went for several centuries.
That's right.
And brought the Muslims into Asia, into North Africa. They were at the gates of Vienna. So you're saying that this original aspiration to conquer territory, subjugate it, bring it under Islamic rule, it has not died off. It remains the guiding goal of these radical Muslims.
That's right. And they seem to ignore their own rule of abrogation, because in the rule of abrogation, as you know, it says that whatever was said in Medina is abrogated by what's said in Mecca, correct? Like, so basically, you're not supposed to really be friends with Christians, or you're not really supposed to be friends with Jews, and you can lie to them. Taqiyya, right?
Taqiyya meaning the word meaning like deception.
Deception. You can deceive them in order to achieve your goal, right? Which is the caliphate. So, because a lot of Muslims will say, oh no, but in the scripture, in the Quran, it says that we are to live peacefully. Yeah, but that's been abrogated by, no, we need jihad.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
this is actually something that Christians would find quite mysterious, right? Because while you have a New Testament and an Old Testament,
Yes.
nobody says that the New Testament somehow overrides
Yeah,
or wipes
that
out the
we-
Old Testament.
we
We
do
don't
not-
abrogate the Old
Right.
Testament.
We don't have a rule of abrogation like the Muslims do.
There is a sort of abrogation. The abrogation, however, I think in Christianity is covenantal, and that means that the old covenant of God with the Israelites is overridden, is in fact abrogated by the new covenant that God makes with all his people. So the new covenant does supersede the old covenant, but the New Testament doesn't supersede the Old Testament. In fact, it incorporates it.
That's right. That's right. So while we should be, like I said, this has been going on for decades. In fact, in 2010, people like Frank Gaffney and others try to sound the alarm of Sharia
Well, I mean,
law.
it is telling, we talk about Ilhan Omar and Minnesota, but it is telling that right here in Red, Texas, you've got strong, there's strong Islamic presence in say, Dallas.
Yeah, well, we just talked not too long ago about the city, right?
Right.
The Muslim city that they want to build over
A
there.
whole housing development with mainly
So-
populated
so
by Muslims.
People thought, oh, the Dallas area, is bad. No, I mean the Houston area is too. And I do think that they like the suburbs because the suburbs tend to be less liberal in a sense of like, morality liberal. So they go to the suburbs. But that's not to say that they're conservative in the way we're conservative, in the way Christians are conservative.
They're socially
because-
conservative. There's obviously a moral conservatism in Islam itself, but you're saying that can be combined with a subjugationist element or a political
That's
radicalism.
right. That's
So
right.
it's a very peculiar combination.
That's right. They're not loyal to one party or the other. That's what we need to understand. They're not going to be, we can't get them to say, well, they need to be good Republicans because for the most part, they go with whichever party forwards their agenda.
Tariff wars, recession fears, stubborn inflation. In this environment, gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs. In volatile markets like right now, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't put your head in the sand. Take control. Safeguard your savings. This is why so many Americans today are turning to Birch Gold Group like Debbie and I have. They've helped tens of thousands convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. Isn't it time for you to find out if you can hedge against inflation and economic instability with gold? Well, to learn how to own physical gold in a tax-sheltered account, text Dinesh to 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free information kit, no obligation, just information. Again, text my name, Dinesh, to the number 989898. Birch Gold has an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews. I count on Birch Gold to help me protect my savings with gold, and you can too. Text Dinesh to 989898 today. Debbie and I care about our health. We've come across a remarkable device that we use every day, and it's a total game changer. It's called Juvent Micro Impact Platform. It's based on the latest cutting-edge science. It uses micro impact frequency to promote joint health, improve bone density, boost circulation, even stimulate the production of stem cells in your body. That's crazy, right? But it works, and all you have to do is stand on it. I stand on it for about 10 to 12 minutes a day, Debbie about 20, and that's it. We find it makes those crinks and stiffness and aches and pains vanish. It can even add up to 5 years to your life. Wow. You got to learn about this new technology, and there's a lot to learn. By the way, don't confuse it with some gimmicky vibration plates out there. Go to Juvent, juvent.com/Dinesh to learn more. That's juvent.com/Dinesh. They've also got a great deal for you. $500 off, 10-year warranty, financing options, even a 6-week buyback promise because they believe in the product so much. Juvent can change your life. Find out how. Check it out. Go to juvent.com/Dinesh. Let's pivot and talk about Trump and tariffs. And you were asking me, I think this morning, maybe yesterday, about what is the real difference between Trump 2.0 and Trump 1.0 with regard to tariffs.
Yeah.
And I was saying that I think that it's two things. One is, in the first Trump term, tariffs were less prominent. There were tariffs, but they were not front and center. And second of all, Trump did his tax cuts first. So he did the tax cuts and got them implemented, got them passed, and he had, like now, a narrow majority, but he was able to nevertheless get the tax cuts through, and we have them to this day. And so now it seems the priority is reversed. Now, just a couple of days ago, the House of Representatives did pass, after some opposition, the kind of one big beautiful tax bill that Trump is talking about. So the tax bill is in fact moving, but Trump has ruffled feathers and roiled the waters because he has made a much bigger deal of tariffs. The tariffs themselves are much larger, they're more comprehensive, and we seem to be in a straight out tariff punching match
with China. Well, I was thinking about that as we were driving to the podcast. I'm thinking, I wonder if, because Trump was so hard on China in 2016, 2018, I wonder if they retaliated with COVID. And I wonder what they're going to unleash on the world with these tariffs. I mean, do you think that they could do something that horrific again?
Well, I don't put anything, it's not as if moral scruples will prevent the Chinese from doing what they're going to do or what they can do. So I think we have to view them suspiciously as really a potential adversary. We shouldn't make enemies where we don't need to make them, but we should not treat the Chinese, we can't trust them. I think that's obvious. The other thing about it is, now we've built up an economy that is very dependent on China. And I think this is bad in multiple ways. Many people focus on the defense aspect of it, which is kind of legitimate. But above and beyond that, the first thing is, when China sells all this stuff to us, much more than we sell over there, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that giant amount of US dollars are turned over to the Chinese, because we have to pay them for their products, right? And what do we pay them in? We don't pay them in Japanese or euros. We pay them in US dollars. And what do they do with those US dollars? They buy U.S. government securities, which is basically bonds. These are loans that the U.S. government needs to issue these bonds because they're overspending. They need to pay to spend that money, and they do it by issuing these bonds, which are basically IOUs. So the Chinese are sitting on this giant, hill of U.S. treasuries. That's not good. It's not good that they have the ability. They have the ability to basically dump those treasuries on the market. And if they did that, then the U.S. Federal Reserve would have to buy those treasuries, which is another way of saying print money.
Print more money.
Right? Because how does the U.S. Treasury, where does the Federal Reserve get the money to buy these treasuries?
That's right.
It invents it.
That's
it makes
right.
it up. It creates it out of thin air.
Yeah.
This puts us in a bad situation. The other bad situation is you've got people who are truly, I think, addicted is not even is the right word, to low quality garbage products from China.
But I told you, though, they're very deceptive, because whenever I order stuff, it says it's made in America.
Debbie orders these wreaths for our front door, and when you look at them, you're like, what did I order?
No, it gets better. Okay, so you remember during COVID, and everybody was like, oh, I need toilet paper, and it was all, gone from the shelves at the grocery stores. So what do? I go to Amazon and I order toilet paper. The toilet paper was the size of children's butts. It was tiny.
It was tiny.
It was
and wasn't it just like a I mean, it was only like 3 feet long.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't really
Yeah,
normal, a
no,
normal roll.
It wasn't a normal roll. It was little tiny rolls. And I thought, is this a joke? No, it's from China. Okay. Well, every time I order something from Amazon or Walmart or whatever, I think I'm going to get something really good because I look and it says made in the USA, and that's a lie. It was not made in the USA. It was made in China. The company may be in the USA, but they do all their manufacturing in China. Now, the wreaths, okay, this is how deceptive they were. They said USA made company, right? I was like, oh, that's good. And then they do AI on the wreaths, and they superimpose them on doors. And they're like, this is what it looks like on a door. Lies. Okay, it's AI. They made them big to look like they were proportionate.
And the actual wreaths are
oh my
sorry.
gosh. Yeah, so I get them and I'm like, oh my gosh, they are for, again, a Barbie house. They're not for our house. They're tiny little wreaths. So what do? We give them away because sending them back is even more expensive.
You know, in free market discussions, people always assume that the customer knows best, the market knows best.
Not in this case. Oops.
You're talking about the way in which products can be deceptively marketed. But let's even put that aside. Let's assume they're not deceptively marketed, right? Here's the question, I think, and that is that if you look at, well, let's look at a place like Italy, where if you go into a home, and it doesn't have to be, even if it's, let's take an upper middle class home, an Italian family, the guy is working for a big company, he's got an excellent job, he's being really well paid. You look inside his closet, you'll see like 3 suits. Even though he's wearing a suit every day to work, he owns 3. Now, they're generally good quality suits. One of them could be like an Armani suit, it could be like $1,500, but he doesn't have like 10 suits. And then you look down in his shoe closet and he has like 3 pairs of shoes, right? And why? Because he's got a pair of dress shoes, he's got a pair of sneakers, and then he's got a pair of like, you know, loafers. And that's it, right? Then I go and look in my closet and I notice I've got like more sweaters than I can count, right?
Think?
And
More,
I like sweaters.
More polos.
I got more polos than I can
shoes,
count.
More
Yeah.
shoes.
And at some point you realize this is like ridiculous.
Diva man.
Right? Well, no, and you know, I mean, obviously we do a podcast every day,
Yeah,
and so you know, I wear polos on the podcast, and so, but nevertheless, the point I'm trying to make is that there is an excess
Oh, for
that
sure.
is really not adding a whole lot to our comfort. It doesn't. It's not improving our lifestyle.
Well, look at all the shoes I have, and look how many I wear.
Right.
versus
Well,
how
you are
many
a bit of a shoe addict.
I
in
am,
fairness.
but I buy these shoes, and then I'm like, oh, they hurt. So then I don't wear them, but I like to see them in the closet, like, you know. But I only wear very comfy shoes these days, like really comfy. But obviously, you know,
Well, here's what I'm talking about. The reason we're mentioning all this is because there is a trade-off right now, and Trump is very aware of this, between American consumerism from China on this side and American jobs from domestically manufactured products on this side. And the question is, which should be given more priority? Because it is a seesaw, right? If we do more business with China, it helps the consumer. More goods,
yeah.
you know, 8 more pairs of shoes for you. Shoes cost, you know, $27.95 in Walmart instead of costing, let's just say, $75 or more. And maybe my pricing
You're
structure is
off.
completely off, which I
You're
probably
way
am.
off.
Or we let the price of shoes be what it is, what it may be, and we emphasize, let's start making a lot more shoes in America, but not just shoes, but also steel and cars and other things. It's more important to have more well-paying jobs and fortify, you know, eroded, tattered communities that have succumbed to despair and drugs. It's more important to do that kind of domestic rebuilding. I think that's what Trump's eye is on that. And of course, corporate America's freaking out because guess what? They benefit more from Chinese trade.
That's right. And so what's all this business about? Oh, Trump is in it for his billionaire friends and his millionaire friends.
Think of how ridiculous that's
It
been
is
exposed
ridiculous.
as
Ridiculous.
totally
Well,
preposterous.
look at the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. She's for the tariffs.
Well, she's kind of made a pilgrimage to Trump because
Yeah.
I think I'm not even sure what her views of this are. And you know that she's not happy about being on Trump's side with anything.
No.
Democrats, by and large, if Trump is over here, they want to be over here. If he's up, they're down. If he's down, they're up. But I think in her case, she's got she's got car companies in Michigan. She's got other manufacturing in Michigan. A lot of that's gone away. She's got unions in Michigan that support the tariffs. So this is a very, I won't say it's strange bedfellows. I'm not saying that there's a full alliance between them, but there is some common ground on tariffs, and for this reason.
Well, I think the Democrats are mad because really the party now with Trump at the helm is really more for the working class and even, incredibly, the
unions.
The unions, yes, which used to be very democratic, very, very much on the Democrats'
I remember in the
role.
Reagan era, first of all, we hated unions.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
weren't opposed to the idea of unions, but we hated the way that the unions had become an extension of the state. Whenever there's you'd have management and unions sit down to meet, the government would intervene on the side of the union. So it's putting its finger on the scale. This is not a normal discussion between union and management. Let's work out a compromise. Let's figure out how you can continue to make profit and we can continue to be well paid. That kind of give and take is fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what was
No.
going on.
It
But
became-
interestingly, you'll rarely hear Trump say a negative word about unions.
Yeah, no.
In
but
fact,
yeah.
there were unions that backed Trump
That's right.
in 2024.
That's right. Yeah, with the Democrats, it became very corrupt, which is kind of, it makes sense because everything's corrupt with the Democrats, right? So, but now it's really interesting how things have shifted and how you cannot claim that Trump is trying to help billionaires because there are many billionaires who are quite upset with Trump right now because of the tariffs.
No question. Let's talk about these judges and about the Supreme Court. There have been now at least 2, maybe 3, pretty notable Supreme Court interventions slapping down these runaway judges. And yet, at least for a lot of MAGA right-wingers, they're viewing the Supreme Court with skepticism, partly because, first of all, these have been fairly narrow rulings. Amy Coney Barrett, for example, going the other way in one of the very critical rulings that had Roberts also gone that way, we would have lost.
That's right.
But because Roberts went with the conservative majority, it was 5-4, too close for comfort. And this one concerned Judge Boasberg. It concerned the whole issue of deportation. So in other words, it concerned an executive action and policy quite central to Trump's program. But there has to be some way to stop the judges from just second-guessing everything Trump does. It's just out of control, right? There are 600 of these judges. They could stop every executive action by just saying, we need to litigate this. And in the meantime, I'm going to put a temporary restraining order, and then let's just take months and months and sort of argue it in front of my courtroom as if I, the judge, now get to say if you, Trump, are permitted to do this.
Well, first of all, why are we shocked by this? Didn't they do this type of thing, lawfare, to try to get Trump not to be able to run for president? So hasn't this been like a thing with these Democrats from the get-go?
I don't think that this is, you're right that this is in the same judicial kind of let's get Trump.
That's
True.
right.
But I don't think it fits the lawfare model in this sense that lawfare really is, using the law to try to criminalize or go after Trump or Trumpsters, right? Here, the judges are taking something that traditionally is a judicial responsibility, which is to say, to determine the constitutionality of an action, either by Congress or the president. That is the judge's job. But here's, I think, where that breaks down, and that is that these district court judges are issuing nationwide injunctions. The plaintiffs could be like three guys. Let's just say three Mexicans who say we should not have been deported. The judge then interprets this, even though it's not a class action suit. The judge says, okay, I'm going to treat these three Mexicans as representing the entire illegal population that has been, let's say, deported under this.
So not just his jurisdiction, but all jurisdictions.
And not just those particular plaintiffs, but all similarly situated people. And then the judge issues a nationwide rule. Now, for a while, I know that this is something that is customary. Judges have been doing this. That's not new. But I thought there has to be some constitutional or statutory authorization for judges to have this kind of power. And as it turns out, there is none. There's no statement in the Constitution that says a federal judge can issue these nationwide injunctions, nor is there any law, nor is there any Supreme Court ruling that says that this is the way it has to be. So what we have here is something that is customary, but customary doesn't mean it's okay. I mean, it is customary for Republicans and Democrats to loot the Treasury by making deals with lobbyists that result in them voting against their constituents' interests in exchange for large donations that help them to get reelected. That's customary. But does that mean that is a kind of honest carrying out of what democracy should be? No.
Right.
So it has been allowed, it's been going on, but it's clearly not right.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's not only not right, there is no legal authorization for it.
Why do you think Amy Coney Barrett said that, or she agreed with the liberal judges? Why do you think that is?
I think it is because on certain issues, Amy Coney Barrett is very soft. And the two issues in particular are, I'm going to call them essentially George Floydism and immigration. This has to do with the fact that she is Catholic.
Oh, right.
And it has to do with the fact that she has multiple adopted black children. So, for example, if you listen to what Amy Coney Barrett was saying after George Floyd, it was the same as a lot of liberal pablum. This is a very disturbing day for our family. I've been having some very meaningful conversations with my children.
I had no idea.
Yeah. She's acting as if it's like a crisis in her family because this home invader, George Floyd, who had his body riddled with drugs, So she bought into that whole cult. I'm sure if she was there with Nancy Pelosi, she'd be taking a knee.
Oh my gosh.
And so on that issue, she's horrible.
Yeah.
Similarly, as you know, the Catholic Church
I know.
has converted, they've basically found illegal immigration, to be a huge source of profit.
That's right.
A source of profit that is much needed, by the way, after, a lot of people have been turned away from the church. All these, scandals. They've had to pay a lot out in lawsuits. So they've been looking for a new way to make money, aside from the collection plate.
Yeah. But I will say this, so the Catholic Church as a whole does this, and they use it as
Catholic charities.
As morality. But I mean, even the church as morality, and then all the other churches take a cue from them. Oh, we must be good to our neighbors. We must be good to the foreigners. Let's bring them in without them getting any compensation. They just think it's the morally right thing to do. So they fall trap into that, into that way of thinking. Whereas it's like, no, this is they are breaking the law. These are criminals. This is not something that is like a moral justification to ignore federal laws, right?
Exactly.
But they all fall prey into it.
MyPillow is excited to announce they are extending the mega sale on overstock, on clearance, and also on brand new products. This is your chance to grab some incredible deals on some of MyPillow's most popular and newly released items. For example, save $40 on the new spring MyPillow bed sheets, available in any size, any color. These luxurious sheets are designed for maximum comfort and breathability. They're perfect for a great night's sleep. Looking for a meaningful gift? Save 30% on the brand new Mike crosses, inspired by the one Mike Lindell has worn every day for over 20 years. These beautifully crafted crosses come in both men's and women's designs and are proudly made in the USA. Get the 6-piece bath or kitchen towel sets, just $39.98. Initial quantities are low, so act now. And don't forget the best-selling standard My Pillow, now just $17.98. Plus orders over $75 ship free. Call 800-876-0227. Again, that's 800-876-0227, or go to mypillow.com. Make sure to use the promo code DINESH, Dinesh. Yeah, let's talk about the Frisco teen.
Yeah. So
this is the kid who was stabbed by the black guy named Carmelo
Anthony.
And you were showing me that in the black community, they've raised a bunch of money for this guy's defense. And you showed me a video, which is all over X these days, where a quite kind of brash young woman is saying, "Oh yeah, the days of Rosa Parks and sitting in the back of the bus are those days are over." I think what she meant is that the peaceful civil rights movement is over, and now if you put your hands on somebody, she was acting like Carmelo is justified in stabbing this kid because that's self-defense. Because my space is sacred, and if you invade my space, well, you've aggravated me to the point where I have the right to kill you.
Yeah. So he's turned that into self-defense, right?
Self-defense.
Which is ridiculous on the face of it, because a push, a shove, even a slap does not warrant a murder. I mean, it just doesn't.
Am I not right that for self-defense you have to have a reasonable expectation that your life is in imminent danger?
Absolutely.
Not just in danger, but in imminent danger.
Yes.
And it should be your life. Now, look, I mean, I grant, when I first came to America, I was struck by something that we don't have in India, which was this idea of personal space. You know about this, right? In a lot of cultures, I think in Venezuela as well. People don't respect each other's space.
No.
So, for example, somebody will come and lean up against your car and touch
or
your car.
You.
Or you. Or they will come and speak like
right
5 inches from your face. And so in America, you've got this idea, this is my space. But that's a whole different thing from a justification to end somebody's life. I think this is really where things have gone completely out of control.
They have. And I'm sorry, but if I was a juror in Frisco, I mean, look, the facts are the facts. It doesn't matter what the young man did, as far as like, hey, you're in my seat, or you shouldn't be in this tent, and then if they say, oh yeah, touch me and you'll see what happens. Yeah, usually in those kind of cases, it's like, touch me and you see what happens, I'm going to push you back or whatever.
Right.
Touch me and see what happens, I'm going to stab you in the heart and kill you forever and ever at the end of it, is not something that should be tolerated in our society.
No.
And I don't care if you're purple, if you're blue, if you're black, if you're Latino, if you're white, it does not matter.
Yeah,
that does not constitute self-defense.
Yeah, and there's also, I think, a big difference between outlining the cultural factors that create this twisted sense of, this guy dissed me and I'm disrespected and I have to stand up for my own honor. I mean, there was a twisted culture of honor, for example, in the old American South, where people would fight duels over the smallest things. I mean, you could have a guy, a plantation owner, in fact, a respectable guy, and he would be with a college classmate that he had been to school with. And the college classmate, as a joke, let's say, would pull out the stool from behind you so you'd sit on the ground, right? But if you rubbed this guy the wrong way, if you offended his Southern honor, he would challenge you to a duel to the death over something so idiotic. Even though you were playing a prank, his sense of honor would be injured. And I think what we're seeing, it's funny because in some ways that same culture of honor and shame has been transmitted or transmuted to the underclass black community. Now, interestingly, you were telling me that this Carmelo guy is not from the ghetto. He's not like underclass black guy. He's a middle class black guy. But I was saying that, guess what? It is ironic that in the black community, the middle class takes its cues from the underclass. And in fact, as you know, there are white kids who love rap music and are kind of wannabe blacks.
I like rap music.
You like rap music as well. That's true. But have you heard the term wigger? So wigger is a white guy who is, in a sense, culturally black.
Yeah.
And so this is the phenomenon that we're talking about. All right, let's talk about Megyn Kelly, because there's an interesting traditionalism I see now on the X platform, by the way, supported by a lot of men and a lot of women, which is sniffing out any signs of feminism and like hammering it. And the latest target of all people is Megyn Kelly, because the theme of the traditionalists is basically that men and women are not only different, because it's one thing to say you're different. It goes much further than that. It's that men and women have completely different roles in society, and that there needs to be an affirmation of a societal standard of the man as breadwinner, provider, the woman as homemaker, raising the kids. Now, Megyn Kelly, I think, rather innocently walked into this debate and said something like, back off, everybody. We need to celebrate strong women who have career. I think Megyn Kelly was in a way, I don't even think she was thinking of it ideologically. I think she just thought, well, I'm just kind of stating the sort of strong woman ideal that my own life in a way reflects. But she like walked into this buzzsaw of attacks where by and large the theme of it was, hey, Megyn Kelly, listen, you don't have a typical life. You know, you are, first of all, you are a multimillionaire. You can have a nanny, and you can have a whole retinue of servants running around and doing this and doing that. We're talking now about the normal American family and what is the best way to flourish in a difficult economic environment. What do you make of all this stuff with this trad wife anti-feminism that is out there now? It's something that, in fact, our friend Braden Sorbo talked about in connection with his book, and you were actually chuckling throughout the conversation because he was speaking about it in a very Gen Z type of rhetoric. But the issue is much broader than that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is one of those cases where I think it is a choice that a woman can make, whether or not to be a career woman and go full hog on that and just, just devote all your time to that, or be a stay-at-home mom, take care of your kids. Now, I think what Megyn Kelly's trying to say is that you can do all of it. Right? I think that's what she's trying to say.
Right.
She is a mom. She does take care of her kids and all that, and she has a wonderful career. But as you mentioned, her career is a little different than most careers of normal people because, if you're, let's say, a school teacher, right? And you have 5 kids, and you have to put the 5 kids in daycare. There goes your paycheck.
And more.
And more, right? So is it worth you going to work just so you can have a career and then pay all this money in daycare?
But I think that this traditional critique goes even beyond that, because let's now take somebody who's a partner in a law firm, and making $1 million a year, and they have 4 kids. They can easily afford to pay for daycare. But I think the traditionalists would say, yeah, but you're still abandoning your kids because you stick them in daycare, and sure, economically you come out ahead, but that's not really what your kids need. What they actually need is a mom.
Yeah. Well, look, personally, what I feel personally, my biggest regret in life is not being there full time for my children when they were little. I was off singing. I did teach school. I taught 11 years on and off, and then my singing career was not a flourishing singing career, but it was a career nonetheless. It took me away.
You would travel.
I traveled, and so I regret that.
You also taught in your son's school.
Yeah.
So it's not as if you were off over here. and your kids were over there, you're actually teaching in this very school that your son is, and in part that was your motive for teaching
right.
there.
It was. But again, that was just a couple of years of my time, right?
Right.
So yes, I do regret not being there full time for my children, because I do feel like it's not that I did not neglect my kids. My mom lived with us, and so we were a very close-knit family, and
Right.
and all of that, and they were well taken care of. But I just, as a personal note, I do regret that.
And we sometimes talk about the fact that this is actually one of our great blessings, because when we meet people, we often find that even people who have quite successful lives in many ways, nevertheless, they have major problems with at least one of their kids.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's on drugs, or that guy is such a rebel, or this guy is like no longer maintains any contact with the family, or massive feuding. And so in some ways, if you have kids and they're not feuding and they are not on drugs and they're not in rehab, but they have jobs, all the kind of issues that we will talk about in relation with our kids just seem so minor that it's almost like a joy to have those kinds of problems instead of some of the very serious problems that people have, which must be a real drain on their well-being.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Now, we're very fortunate indeed that is the case. And we're excited. We're going to be grandparents for the second time soon.
That's true.
And remember, we are in a couple of weeks. We'll have Dee fill in for you while we go to Israel. But we have baby number 2 coming up in May.
Yeah, very exciting.
That'll be exciting. I think it's going to be a boy, but I don't know. I mean,
Well, I have to chuckle because you had, sometimes Debbie operates on dreams, and you had two separate dreams. You had a dream that it was a boy, and then you had another dream that it wasn't a boy, and Danielle was like, you thought it was going to be a
Yes, and then Danielle's like, you thought it was going to be a boy, and it's turning out to be a girl. You were wrong. And I was like, oh. So I had 2 different dreams.
One canceling out the other.
But I don't know. I'm just saying, I think it might be a boy this time around.
Let's close out by talking about your aura ring.
About actual boys and girls.
You have a talk. Well, tell people what this aura ring is, because it connects to an issue we want to talk about, which is the difference between boys and girls, men and women. Yeah. So this ring is something that, well, you've had it now for about a year?
I've had it for 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And you wear it pretty much all the time.
I wear it all the time.
Yeah.
It's actually, the reason I got it was, and I know there are people out there like, oh, you don't want your data going around and having, people see your data and all that. But this is actually, it was done because I was having issues with sleep. And I know sleep is very important, especially at my age. When you start getting up there, you start sleeping less and having more insomnia. And as you know, all those things affect your well-being during the day and your productivity and all of that. So it's called Aura, O-U-R-A, and we're not sponsors of Aura or anything like that.
It's like this electronic marvel where it registers all this data.
Yes, so it registers my REM sleep, it registers my deep sleep, it registers my heartbeat, my heart rate, all those things. It gives me a score. Hold
on. So I think what is very funny is very often in the morning I'll say to you, how do you sleep? Right? And a normal person would be like, I feel so rested. I slept great. But you say, hold on, I've got to look at my score, right? And then you go, I got an 88. I must have slept.
Yes.
So your aura ring tells you how to feel about your sleep.
It really does. And let me tell you, so last night, I thought I had a pretty good night's sleep. My score was only an 82. And I didn't get a crown. You only get a crown if it's like 88 and above. Hardly anybody gets over 95. And 95 is like the top I've never gotten a 96. 95 is it. So, but I didn't get that last night. I got an 82.
Now, we were having a conversation about the aura, and you made a very interesting point, right? And that is, you said that your aura ring is rooted in human biology, in the
Yeah.
unalterable biological givens of human nature.
That's right.
And explain what you mean by
Yeah.
this.
Well, so when you buy the Aura ring, you have to fill out a bunch of information, personal
Basic
information,
data.
basic data. One of those is, are you male or female? But it says assigned at birth, right?
In other words, not what you identify with.
Right. And so I'm sure that they have, and then they have this little asterisk next to it, kind of like click here so you understand why we're asking you this.
Yeah.
Right? So it says why we ask. We base our algorithms and development on scientific research. We ask about sex assigned at birth because with this information and other factors, we can best interpret your biosignals and give you personalized recommendations. We use sex assigned at birth to optimize our activity tracking feature like workout heart rate, METs, metabolic equivalent, and basal metabolic rate. We develop and validate our algorithms, such as sleep staging and period prediction, also based on this information.
Okay, so here's how I interpret that, because all of this, of course, makes total sense. What they're basically saying is that you have a feminine anatomy, and it's going to register feminine metrics. And it doesn't matter if you claim you're a boy, grow a mustache, or paste a mustache on your lips. It doesn't matter if you wear male clothing
or take hormones.
Yeah. Your basic biological structure remains female and mine male.
That's right.
And so a ring like this, which is essentially a quasi-medical device, is useless if you essentially go based upon imaginary facts about yourself.
Your preference.
And by imaginary, I mean in your mind.
Right. Yeah. So they're saying that it doesn't matter what's in your mind, that it actually matters what's in your physiology.
Yeah.
Right?
And even they're a little wimpy about it because they go with the term assigned at birth as if to say that someone is making an arbitrary assignation. No.
That's right. Yeah.
They really should say sex observed at birth.
Right. Now, I don't know what an Aura ring would do for like that guy from the Algerian guy. I don't know.
The
about
Algerian
that.
guy is, and I don't even mean this negatively. He's a freak of nature. By that I mean he has ambiguous genitalia.
But what I'm saying is, I don't know what the algorithm for someone like that would be if they have both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could mess with your sleep.
I think the important lesson here is that, and it was summed up by the writer Samuel Johnson, and it allows you to keep your mind clear of these things. And basically what Johnson says is that the fact of twilight does not eliminate the distinction between day and night.
Ooh.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.